So behind me we have Superstition Mountains. It's one of the key points people come to Goldfield for. Legends say that the mountain behind us is the cursed source of all the paranormal activity here at Goldfield. So here in Goldfield, it's an actual ghost town. They don't have their own post office. They do get all their mail from Apache Junction, so it is a real ghost town. As we said in Oatman, if it has a post office, it is not a real ghost town. So this is going to be our very first ghost hunt or ghost tour in a real ghost town. So even though Goldfield is a real ghost town, as you can see, it is still alive and well. There's lots of living things to do here. I don't know if that's the right way to say that. So here in Goldfield, the Goldfield Museum is one of the highlights to come and learn history about Goldfield. They have everything from the Lost Dutchman's mine to a lot of cowboy stuff, boots, guns, all sorts of amazing things. But at night, the spirits come out. So yes, Goldfield is haunted reportedly. One of the more haunted places is the brothel behind me. It is said to have many stories and several women that haunt it. You'll get to hear all about those when you take the tour here. If you've heard of ghost hunting, I'm sure you know all about Ghost Adventures. They've even done a ghost hunt here at the brothel in Goldfield. Did you know Goldfield has its very own cemetery? Here, you always hear rest in peace. But after our ghost tour, I have to admit, I don't think they're all resting in peace. So here in the mine, you get to hear about some of the other spirits that are here at Goldfield. And not all the spirits are as nice as the others. Here in the mine, you get to hear about some of the darker spirits that inhabit Goldfield. They even turn out the lights, and some people claimed to have been touched, things pulled, all in total darkness.
And while doing so, it is our intention to keep you in one piece and still breathing when the tour is over. So to ensure that happens, please listen carefully to what I am about to tell you.
So tell us about Fear Frontier.
Fear Frontier is essentially a sort of a blanket term that describes what we do. We call ourselves Fear Frontier, and we both entertain by educating people about the history of the Superstition Mountains and the town of Goldfield, but we also do our own investigations, not just in the town of Goldfield, but other places as well. So Fear Frontier is essentially both entertainment and a way into researching what we can find out about the paranormal, what exists on the other side of the veil. And yeah, so we're kind of two ends of the spectrum, the entertainment and the more frightening than just entertainment, if it frightens.
The tour will venture through dimly lit areas with no visibility. So please, at all times, follow your guide and do not wander away from the room.
My partner Michael and I, we began doing this around 2020, but it was very small at the time. It was just a tour once in a while, bringing people out kind of word of mouth. But more and more people have been beginning to discover what we do and that we're here. So really this past year is when it sort of blew up, when we found ourselves being fortunate enough to be interviewed by YouTubers and news outlets, and more people are starting to discover Fear Frontier and the Goldfield Ghost Tour and coming out here to see us. So it's the last year that it's really blown up, but Fear Frontier was established in 2020.
Well, welcome back. And if you've never been here, welcome too. And if you've never been here, I do want you to know that Goldfield was an active and very, very rich gold mining town all throughout the 1890s. And now, every single day, people return here to watch the past come back to life before their very eyes.
Just last night, there were people in the mine that became so frightened. 2 people left, and the 2 people that stayed behind that were part of the family of those that left became overwhelmed with fear, wooziness, dizziness. They suddenly felt unwelcomed. But then once we all got out of the mine, they said they felt better, but the moment we went into the Bordello, another infamous haunted location, the exact same thing happened there. And there was another guest with us that was saying something followed them. They said it even before those people were feeling anything. There was also a spirit box present that said the words, "I'm going to touch her, look to the right." Right after that came through, a woman came out to my right and said, "I need to get out of here." She was too afraid to stay, and I saw visible tears in her eyes, actually. The place is very real.
At night, the town is known to change, for lack of a better word, into something else entirely. I've even heard some people try and describe it as something of a facade. As if when the sun goes down, Goldfield suddenly decides to put on a mask, almost as if trying to hide its truer identity. But I would actually disagree. I think when the sun goes down, Goldfield instead removes its mask and reveals its true identity. And I think every single one of you have come here tonight in hopes to get a glimpse of the face that would be beneath that mask. The irony being, you have to look into the dark in order to see it. Why? And the answer is actually a lot more simple than you might expect. For it's actually because of that mountain. Because there is a 5,000-foot monolith that resides just across the way into the darkness there. That is actually said to be cursed. So tonight, it would seem that there are approximately 17 of you. And while tonight, I cannot promise the 17 of you that you will see, hear, interact with, or be interacted with by a ghost, I can tell you, in Goldfield, your chances are a little bit better than most of the places that you may have been before. And seeing that is something you can all take to your graves. Please at all times remain in front of my door and follow. But it is very necessary to bring you here first, where the past weds the present. Because here, in the mid-1980s, a man by the name of Bob Shush bought the rights to the town of Goldfield, and he turned into what you see it as today. But this would not come easy. First, it had to be resurrected from the ashes of what it was 1 century prior, because in the mid-1880s, a man by the name of Hicks was in these parts hunting, when one day he went to collect a kill, and he noticed the rocks around the kill were shiny. And as he further investigated, he soon discovered a small trench filled with gold. He contacted experts he knew, both from Arizona and as far as Colorado, and together they turned that trench into a vein. And that vein soon became the mouth of the Mammoth Mine, just 100 yards north of the church at the top of our town. And it was from the Mammoth Mine that they pulled the richest golden ore that the state of Arizona had ever witnessed before. And soon there were 17 more mine shafts that emerged all throughout these hills, and every single one of them were rich. It was from that the town of Goldfield originally grew. And you should have seen it. 3 times the size that it is now. There were schools here because there were families here. And there were banks, and there were post office, and there were doctors, and there were even 3 saloons. So imagine for a moment being 4 hours away from the next nearest town, but you could still go bar hopping. Goldfield was the place to be, but unfortunately that dream was not meant to last, because in October of 1897, while 1,058 feet beneath the ground, the men in this town struck an aquifer. And this aquifer sent a river rushing down the mine shaft, and it filled everything up into a water table so high, it's still there to this day. So just under your feet is Arizona's largest lake. It just happens to be underground because Arizona has always had a pretty sick sense of humor when it comes to water. But it was enough to kill the entire town of Goldfield. The men here, after being separated from all that gold, had no choice but to pack everything up and leave, turning the town into the ghost town that it is more known as today. Where an entire century later, the owner, Bob Shush, would begin to breathe life into it once again, bringing countless construction workers out here to help him do so, when one day he himself was among them, digging to place a line of telephone poles, when suddenly the machine he was using to do so died. And this happened on top of many other issues with construction all throughout the town. It was only day 1, and they were already saying that maybe the ground here no longer wanted to be disturbed. But Bob Shush is not the kind of man to let little things like this stop him. So after much effort, he finally began to break a fair amount of ground when he noticed the man alongside him by the name of Salvador began to motion to him something like this, and Bob thought he was trying to tell him to dig deeper. So he did, until he realized Salvador was screaming. When Bob ran to see what the matter was, Salvador told him that protruding from the dirt, he could actually see a human feel. And then that day, Bob Shush and Salvador uncovered over 90% of a man's remains. And they called the authorities. It made headlines. The story actually garnered the attention of the University of Arizona, who then wanted to claim the body for what they said to be forensic purposes. Bob obliged, only to discover the university was not being honest at all in their claim. They tried to keep the corpse permanently for themselves, starting a year-long war between the town of Goldfield and the University of Arizona. But during that year, paranormal activity in this town skyrocketed to the point that the men who were working on it became afraid of it. And things that they would speak of seeing, and the things that they would speak of hearing,
tide out of a horror story. But again, Bob Schuch is not the kind of man to let little things like this stop him. So after they continued to reconstruct anything in the town that needed to be reconstructed, I'm happy to say at the end of the year, we won the case against the University of Arizona and got back what was always rightfully ours to begin with. So we reburied the man, just where I'm standing. And today, he is known as the Unknown Prospector. The Unknown Prospector was given a biggest send-off anyone in Goldfield had ever witnessed before, which makes for a happy ending to a long story. But I also think Bob Schuch was hoping to close the lid, so to speak, on the paranormal activity in this town, but unfortunately for him, yet rather fortunately for us, it didn't work. And now if you'd all be so kind as to once again and we know that for centuries, families were coming here to this desert, trying to make a better life for themselves, which is a little bit ironic considering how harsh the conditions of this desert would have been. And if that wasn't enough, everything that scurries across this desert floor wants to kill you. And if that wasn't enough, everything as far as the eye can see belonged to the native tribe of the Apache. And the Apache did not want anyone here. So imagine for a moment being part of a group of settlers, maybe about this size, maybe twice this size, trying to fall asleep here on the ground for the night, knowing you were not welcomed. It kind of makes you wonder, why would anyone want to choose here to make a better life for themselves? But as I also mentioned over there is an ocean of gold beneath our feet, and greed will do some very strange things to a man. Because this desert has always had a small problem with decapitations. But don't worry, at the end of the tour, I'll do another head count. The settlers first arrived. They were not just immediately attacked. They were first warned. They were warned that anyone that trespassed this sacred desert, or God forbid, tried to prospect from that worshipped mountain, that they would be met with a horrible fate. For they told them, inside that mountain, there resides a God. Not just any God. This is a vengeful God that guards the literal portal to hell. Welcome to the main street of Goldfield, where every single establishment that you see around us has a ghost story attached to it. And I wish I could tell you every single one. A man by the name of was leading a horse up the very trail that we all just traversed, and past this building known as towards those stones right there. For just beside those stones, there was a trailer. And the trailer is, of course, where he was intending to lead the horse to, as he must have done 100 times. Because Filsey had very similar, fitting that description, moving about the inside of the mercantile. The man, dressed in period clothing, and almost entirely in white. But more often than not, he's seen right up there on that balcony. And many spectators who claim to have witnessed him say he almost seems to be overwatching the town. Because this building seems to act as something of a vessel for anything that wishes to cross over, to be able to do so quite freely. All the businesses that have been located on the other side of this wall, the longest one standing is that of
apothecary, which means that the apothecary is still in Goldfield. It just moved further up the street because the woman who owns the apothecary, she didn't want to give up her business. She just wanted to give up its location. And for that, I can't blame her. And she stood in the middle of a dark and seemingly empty room. And she began to speak aloud. And she said, if anyone's here that wishes to speak to me, you have my permission. I'm listening. And it didn't take her long to get an answer. She heard the faint voice of a man. And he said, help. I'm trapped. We're gonna go underground now because I think we'll be fine. Follow me. As we are boarding this rickety old elevator, do take note, there's a little bit of a gap between us and the inside of the elevator, so of course, you're gonna wanna watch your step. Go right ahead because I'm not going first. I know, these are the risks we take on the Ghost Tour. Kind of separate against the walls. It doesn't matter which side you're on. We're also going to turn off all flashlights. Now I will admit, skeptics love this part. But believe it or not, this is Danny. Everybody say hi to Danny.
Hi, Danny.
Now, admittedly, at first, I didn't really think a whole lot of that. It wasn't until I began to notice something rather strange about Danny that I began to pay a little closer attention. On some of our tours, even in broad daylight, Danny would just simply be hanging on the hook, as you'd expect him to be. But then on other tours, feeling lightheaded, or maybe even nauseous, weak in the knees, or maybe even like you're about to hit the dirt any second. Does anyone here tonight feel any of those sensations?
Yes.
Over here?
Further down.
In the middle?
Just a bit lightheaded.
Did you feel anything at all before coming down here near Danny? Do you claim to be sensitive to the paranormal?
I'm not sensitive, I'm cold.
Okay. Sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes people don't even realize they are until they are here.
I feel it more.
When he's near. Mm-hmm.
Go back.
Okay. I'll be right back. Danny says bye. In this room, we have seen many skeptics become believers. Because in here, it's not just what can see you, or what you can see, or what you hear. Down here, things like the touch. I actually heard. And when I heard that, I took out a lighter because I decided to make my way over there because I was expecting to see someone. In fact, I was hoping to see someone, but nobody was there. Instead of leaving, because I'm stupid like that, and I listened for the longest time, and for the longest time, I heard nothing. Until from over here. All the way over here. I heard this gate. Who says she's coming back and who says that's the last we ever see her? What's that?
I don't think I like that.
No. I also technically never told you how far to go, which I realized after you left.
I know, I was going and I'm like, I don't like to be
No.
alone in the dark.
No,
kind of funny. When I was a kid, I would tell scary stories to kids in school. I'd get in trouble for it. And everyone told my parents, don't worry, he'll grow out of it. Anyone here fans of the Goldfield Ghost Tour? Yeah. A couple of you, that's good. You guys were aware that they did an episode in our town? Yeah, that's cool. Now, Michael and I thought it was cool if they were here. However, we thought they could have caught a lot more. Admittedly, though, they have one night compared to the many nights that we've been here and seen all kinds of stuff. But if you have seen it, or if you're going to see it, you will most assuredly recognize that building right there that Michael is shining his light on. That is the old bordello. And if you don't know what the bordello is, it is the old Goldfield brothel. And the old Goldfield brothel may be the single most haunted building. Now, these stairs that are behind me, they are very old and they're very narrow. So as we ascend them, tread very carefully and follow me. Welcome you to the bordello. Now, a lot of times when guests enter the bordello, they will immediately begin to tell us about how in here it feels very different than the rest of the town. How in here it feels darker and heavier. Some have even gone as far as to use the word oppressive, which would all make sense because in its day, this would have been a very dark and heavy and sometimes even oppressive place. For an old mining town such as this, most of the men, of course, are going to die beneath. I will admit I was sort of kidding around when I pointed to Bethany and I said, if there's anything here that wants to make its presence known, say the name of the woman that I am pointing to. Well, of course, all of us expecting absolutely nothing to happen. We all heard. All throughout this room. And the three behind that bar began to run to that door.
Okay, so I'm really excited. I'm here with Matt. We took his tour and it was amazing. So I just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Of course.
So how did you get into the paranormal?
Pretty easy. I like scary stuff. Ever since I was a kid, grew up loving horror films. Always liked to be the guy that had a scary story. I wanted to experience a scary story or anything like that. So kind of grew up wanting to be involved in horror and essentially wanted to eventually someday be paid to be spooky. So I made it happen.
So are there any ghosts here that make you feel uncomfortable?
Yes and no. Yes, as in there are things that need boundary. There are things that come off as threatening, and there are things that have physically attacked people, sometimes right in front of me. It's been on camera. But I'm pretty hard to scare. When something presents itself to me that feels like a threat, I usually stand my ground respectfully. So intimidated, but it's hard to frighten me, but I do know where the lines are that one doesn't cross too.
Are there any ghosts here that you have not got to meet yet that you are interested in contacting?
Yeah, probably many actually. Sometimes you might be interacting with something that you don't even fully know what it is, but I mean, there's several spirits in the town that are, some are friendly, like one known as the helpful spirit. The Unknown Prospector that's buried about 20 yards over there is known to possibly be friendly, but I also wouldn't mind meeting some of the more frightening ones. It sort of depends, but and there's burial grounds, spirits of the native Apaches that roamed here. I would be fascinated to respectfully meet them if they were interested in that. But so yeah, the answer is yeah, almost too many to name when you really break it down. But yeah, the answer is definitely.
Very cool. So, with so many ghosts here, do you plan on doing different tours that you can like pick from, or do you just randomly choose which ghosts?
I think it's both. We're currently doing the walking ghost tour, which focuses on the darker side of the town and the Superstition Mountains history. We do want to add legs to the tour where we are equipment based, more like a private, smaller experience where it's a little more hands-on. We're in the process of doing that, and then yes, sometimes on the tour we'll have a vision of going one way, an idea, and then something will happen. Somebody will hear something, or something will happen where I'm like, okay, this needs to be looking into. And next thing you know, we're going there, or we're staying longer in one place than necessary, including this mine right behind me. This place is unpredictable every single tour. So.
Yeah, we had some people saying they were feeling being touched, and he thought it was his friend, and when we turned the light back on, his friend was like way far away. So
Yeah.
that was kind of crazy.
It's common. You'll think, you'll be like, oh, there's no way this is really happening, and then you'll turn the lights on or shine a lighter or a flashlight just to find out, no, your fears are actually happening. There is something unexplainable happening right in front of you.
So do you feel that this is a tour for skeptics like me and Rob, as well as people who believe?
I do, because the believers are a given. They come here and expect to, well, possibly expect to meet something, feel something, and a lot of times they do. In fact, more often than not, we're not surprised at all. To the skeptic, it's great because aside from the spooky side of things, there is just the flat out historic side of things. We never tell people what to believe. We never tell people what's real. We give them history that is based on fact, as in historic fact, or stories that have been handed down so many times that the accuracy is uncanny, and we know that that is a true story, or personal experiences. Some of the stories we tell are even experiences from previous tours. So yes, the skeptic might become the believer, or the skeptic might get exactly what they're looking for, a spooky history lesson. We have it both.
Well, thank you so much for having us here.
Of course.
We did get to enjoy the tour. We did pay for the tour. It was not free. And if you start doing a nighttime investigation, please let us know. We would love to attend those as well.
Well, maybe we'll do a test run and have you guys as like exclusive guests on it or something.
I'm so down. Are you down, Rob?
He's down.
So thank you again for joining us on another adventure, and you have a great night. So it's that time again to wrap up our adventure. So it was amazing. We did take the tour. Matt and Mike were amazing tour guides. Matt led the tour, and Mike helped. The banter between the two was wonderful. They kept us engaged the entire time. Some of the places were very eerie, even for skeptics. So skeptic or believer alike, this is a tour that both will enjoy immensely. No, we didn't find anything that made us true believers, but we'd be happy to do this tour again. It was that good. They're very nice people. It is a reasonably priced thing. It was fabulous. There are some places that you did get that creepy vibe. Even for me, there was one time I was going down a hall because I was going to be the brave one, and I chickened out. When we were getting ready to film, a gimbal that we use kept turning off. So we were trying to, start the tour, and it just would turn off. So when we got back the next day, we pulled it out to figure out what was going on. Works perfectly. Not saying it was a ghost, but it was something interesting that happened. So we highly recommend this tour. It was an amazing thing. I plan on doing it again. I hope you enjoy it as well and have an adventure of your own. Bye.
You can find Fear Frontier social media on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. where you can see photos and videos that are posted of Goldfield and elsewhere, just so you can see how real what we do is and how real this town gets.